I'm very delighted for our first panel. The Ministerial Session, Security in Europe, Fault Lines in the East. I'm sure it's going to be a very suspenseful, fruitful discussion. And for that, I'm delighted to yield the floor to the moderator of that session. She's the founder and director of the European Academy of Diplomacy here in Warsaw. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Katarzyna Pisarski.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Sorry. Yep. I think we're done. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome warmly. With no due delay, I would like to welcome to the stage our wonderful guests, Minister Jacek Czaputowicz, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Minister Pawlo Klimkin, who has joined us, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Welcome. Minister Linas Linkevičius, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania. We always say this. He has been at all our forums, a very good friend of our organizations. And last but not least, our Georgian friend, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, David Zalkalini. Welcome, gentlemen. The problem with the dresses is always the same. Gentlemen, but seriously, we have not even an hour for a discussion that I think is critical, not only for this region, not only for your respective countries, but I think for Europe as a whole and for the transatlantic community as a whole. We have devoted the first opening session of the Warsaw Security to talking about security in the east of Europe. With the goal, first of all, to see how what you are dealing and what are we currently dealing with impacts our countries respectively, but also maybe to discuss a bit the future possible security architecture that could truly see a Europe whole and free. And I propose a format in which for 20-25 minutes we'll have a discussion between us. I'll try to pose a few questions and you are very welcome also to implement in them the messages that you think are important for such a forum like this. But then I will also give the floor to the audience. We have wonderful experts, people with huge knowledge from all around the world, and I also would want to have those voices heard and those questions as well asked. So let me start with Minister Klimkin, if I may. By no doubt, Ukraine is dealing with the most complex security challenges of all our countries, resulting from a war that has been waged on you by Russia in 2014. We all know the numbers. Over 10,000 victims of the war, 1.5 million displaced people, an annexed peninsula, a destabilized Donbas region. But also there have been many unintended consequences of that war. The Atlantic Council in its latest reports talks about something that is called the geopolitical divorce of the century between Ukraine and Russia that I could say has been definitely sealed by last week's split between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and Russian. So my question to you, is, has Russia's intended strategy to break away Ukraine from the West bared any results? And can it bear results in the future if there is not enough of momentum for the necessary domestic reforms that Ukraine is currently looking at? Minister Klimkin, please.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to have such a crowd, such a great crowd, and to have a chat about Ukraine, about the future of Europe. about the future of rule-based world. Ukraine as a reality. The moment you start thinking about Ukraine, what is basically your narrative now? Just let's get back for a moment to the time of the Soviet Union. It was a kind of black box with a window of Schaufenster, nothing else. What you heard about the Soviet Union, you know, military might, sort of socialist reality, and of course, political prisoners. Spend a minute, just a minute, to have a look on a very special exhibition about political prisoners which we have now in Russia. Basically, it's back. There is a map. You know, just have a look on it. With up to 100 political prisoners who are now in Russian prisons on the territory of Russia, in the occupied Crimea, and again more than 100 people in the occupied Donbass. So my simple point, and I've been asked this point many times by many friends, we discussed it with Jacek, is actually Putin's Russia something similar to the Soviet Union? Because it's a very fair question. And my point, definitely not, because when my German friends ask me, okay, Pavlo, maybe we can buy a sort of security ticket by having Nord Stream 2, being dependent on Russian gas, maybe it would work like, you know, the famous East politics in the 70s. So my point, do you really believe, do we have anyone here in this hall with such a great crowd who does believe that Putin's Russia is something similar to Brezhnev USSR? Basically, it's a point. And it's a source of all kind of thinking about why we've been doing that. Why the whole drive in Ukraine? Why so many sacrifices? Why it's about us? What is basically our drive? And our drive is very simple, is to have our Ukraine as very normal, very European, very democratic country with decisions about our future taken by us, simply by us. And it's what Russia can't fundamentally come up with in any sort of reality. And it's about occupation of Crimea and Donbass. It's about very different reality. Can you imagine monument of Stalin now being erected in Kiev or in Kharkiv, in Odessa? In Russia, it's a commonplace now. You've mentioned autocephaly, just to kick off our discussion. 6 months ago, there was great opinion poll in a number of countries with very simple question. What is your favorite festivity? You know the answer in Ukraine. 80+%, 86% said Easter, you know, normal. 84% said Christmas, normal. After that, Independence Day. You know what was the answer in Russia? 85%, if I'm not mistaken, New Year's Eve. Okay, fine, they like New Year's Eve. But right after that, 1% less, 9th of May. 30% plus Christmas, and it shows you a lot about our values as Ukrainians. We are committed Christians, like Poles, like Lithuanians, like Georgians. What kind of values are we talking about in Russia now? And it's my point. What kind of values, what kind of interest, and in what way they basically imagine their future? And this future is about, again, a kind of mixture of Russian imperial thinking and Soviet plus neo-imperial thinking, simply to retain the spheres of influence. And don't be cheated in the idea that the Russians want to get back to sort of Yalta 2.0. It's about famous Vienna Congress with zones of influence. So our wish is very simple. If the whole sequence of sacrifices is about our future, how we understand it, and we would like to define our future on the basis of our values. And I believe you share our values and we share your values. So it's the same community, whether we call it Transatlantic Community of Values. And basically, it's the answer.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Minister Klimkin. Minister Linkevičius, you have argued over and over again that by not supporting Ukraine with arms, by the way, the West would not be contributing to the peaceful solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. That is a claim that here in many places in Europe is considered to be controversial. Many European countries think that we should not be fueling the conflict with giving arms. How would you argue to these who do not believe in this approach? And also, on what other ways can we support Ukraine in the aggressive foreign policy of Russia?
Good morning. First of all, thank you, Katarzyna, for nice words and for this privileged status of guest of this forum. This forum really contributes to the strategic thinking and also to practical ideas, which is very important. On your question, well, in short, not much time, maybe in short, I would say that Ukraine, who can argue, they have the right and I would say the duty to defend their country. And let's not forget that they are fighting with a very big power. And somebody who likes to present the conflict like Ukrainian conflict or conflict inside Ukraine, it's totally wrong because it's Russian aggression against Ukraine. What they are doing, they're fighting with the external aggression. All this, so to say, arms machine which is involved, really by far not compatible with their potential. So what we're talking about defensive means about weapons, lethal weapons, to defend their country. You know, I can talk about that because I visited myself all these places, all these hotspots like Avdiivka, Shirokino, the Baltsevo, or other places. I even was witnessing when mines were exploded not far from my delegation. My point is that it's real things happening, and they're defending their territory against not somebody, but those who coming from other country. So peaceful solution sounds very good. All diplomatic solutions also quite favorable. But if you would see peaceful solution in the way to destroy Ukrainian army, I believe it's not the solution we'd like to see. So definitely, arms race, confrontation, it's not good. But now we're talking about right of the country, sovereign country, to defend territory, to defend sovereignty. And one more point. What's going on in Ukraine, or let's say in Georgia, this borderization process, all these testings of our patience and our vigilance and our ability to react adequately to the situation, it's also kind of litmus test. You mentioned values. Values means nothing if not defended. Value is just a slogan, which sounds good, but if it comes to the ground, we always, as we speak, people are fighting. As we speak, people are dying. And they're dying in all over the world, what is really very bad to say, but also in Europe, So let's think about that also like our own responsibility, not just as something remote happening as a science fiction. No, it's real. So my arguments to those who are hesitating just to understand that there are conflicts, there are really very harsh methods engaged and involved, and there are sovereign countries which are making choice, and to defend that choice is not just their business, it's also our business.
Thank you very much, Minister Linkevičius. Moving now from talking about exporting instability that Russia does, let's talk for a moment about importing stability that EU institutions, but also Western institutions, NATO may bring. And my next question goes to Minister Zalkalyani. You in the Southern Caucasus have been by far forerunners in advocating for full integration of your country with Western institutions. But if you look ahead, let's say 10 years from now, do you feel that really membership in NATO and the EU is realistic? And can it become the cornerstone, not only of Georgian security, but more importantly, I want you to look broader, Southern Caucasus security?
Thank you very much, dear Katarzyna, dear colleagues. It's a really pleasure for me to participate in this important gathering. It's first time in my new capacity as Minister of Foreign Affairs I'm participating in the Warsaw Security Conference. And it's got a good opportunity to address the issues related to Georgia's European and Euro-Atlantic aspiration, as well as security challenges Georgia is facing. Right now, before answering your question, I would like to also reflect on the security challenges. And unfortunately, everything has started 10 years ago, back in 2008, after Russian aggression against Georgia, when Russia invaded Georgia, occupied Georgia, and used, before entering to occupation to Georgia, they have used all the hybrid warfare and the cyber attacks, and also using the so-called passports of the Russian citizens, distributing the passports among the population in Skhin Valley region in Abkhazia, and then it followed by the intervention and occupation of Georgian territories. Unfortunately, this occupation still continues. We are facing the process of factual annexation of both Abkhazia and Skhin Valley region. The new narrative Russian Federation is trying to disseminate among international community that Georgia is different, that this is not Ukraine, and it's a new reality. From their perspective, what is happening in Georgia is a new reality. And the new reality is there are two so-called independent states, Skhin Valley and Abkhazia, and their advice to Georgians is better to deal with this new reality, to live with this new reality. This is, cannot be accepted, first of all, by us, by international community, and we should not turn blind eye to all these illegal activities what Russia is doing on our occupied territories. They are expanding their military presence, they are increasing their military presence and deploying the most modern and sophisticated military armament in Abkhazia and Skhin Valley region. Like recently, they have deployed the S-300 anti-ballistic missile systems in Abkhazia, the most radar systems in the Black Sea region. Thus, they are controlling not only Georgia but the whole region beyond. What is our response to all this installation of barbed warfare, this artificial borderization? The people are divided, families are divided, they have no access to their agricultural land to work, they have no access to get education in their native language. Their fundamental human rights are violated. Our response is total elimination of these artificial barriers. Our response is presenting new peaceful ideas, like we did recently tabled for the consideration the peace initiative, which we call Step to Better Future, which envisages sharing all the benefits Georgia is getting from the process of European integration, like the status-neutral approach on trade-related issues, DCFTA, of the visa-free, which was an important achievement for Georgia, and also the education, to provide good education system to people living on the other side. Also, the Georgia's European and Euro-Atlantic aspiration, which we are using as an important mechanism and instrument to establish country which will be attractive for people living on the other side of occupation line. So the process of European integration is the process itself is really very interesting and helpful. We understand that association agreement, which was signed back in 2014, together with the CFTA, is not a membership agreement, rather it's an agreement of Georgia's gradual economic and political association with Europe. But this process helps us to strengthen our state institutions, to build democratic, vibrant democratic society, where human rights are protected, where national minority rights are protected, country which is fighting with corruption, and this is our offer. And our Europeanization process is offered to people living on the other side of occupation line. So we believe that this should be continued in future, and this is one of the important top foreign policy priority for Georgia. The full integration into European and Euro-Atlantic structures is reflected in the main document, Constitution of Georgia, numerous parliamentary resolutions, and also in the governmental program, which was presented by new Georgian Prime Minister to the parliament, where among 6 top principles on which government is, government priorities are based, one of the first priorities is full integration into European and Euro-Atlantic structures. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Although you did not answer the question whether this is a realistic scenario for the entire Southern Caucasus. Do you personally believe that?
So I can tell you that, of course, I wish that this should be a scenario for the internal region of the South Caucasus. But of course, we have to admit that there is different level of integration into European structures. You know that it's an excellent format of Eastern Partnership, and recently we gathered in Luxembourg and we have discussed the 9 years past since the establishment of the Eastern Partnership. Next year we'll celebrate 10th anniversary of the establishment of Eastern Partnership. But it's obvious that different members of the Eastern Partnership, they are demonstrating different level of integration. But the principle of differentiation should be respected, and those who are delivering it, they have to be reciprocated. And this principle is advantage of the Eastern Partnership. We should not fear to the approaching to the Eastern Partnership by these principles. Of course, I wish all members of the Eastern Partnership to demonstrate this significant progress, and this will be a win-win situation for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And this takes me straight to the question I have to our minister, Mr. Jacek Czaputowicz. We will mark, as Minister said, the 10th anniversary of the Eastern Partnership, an initiative crafted between 2 EU member states, primarily Poland and Sweden, and which has grown over those 10 years. What is our Polish vision for this initiative, and how can we, through such initiatives, actually export stability to the East versus importing instability?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very important question, because really next year it will be the 10th anniversary of establishment of this important initiative. But let me, at the beginning, draw your attention to the format of that panel, because it is very interesting. We have here 2 countries member of the, or participating in the Eastern Partnership Initiative, but which are, on the one hand, most advanced, most pro-European, pro-Transatlantic, it is Ukraine and Georgia, and also suffer from external aggression. But these countries are, as I said, somehow privileged within this group of 6. On the other hand, we have 2 European Union member states, Lithuania and Poland. I think that, I don't know if Lina agrees with me, but these countries are most within the European Union oriented towards East and understand the threat posed by Russian aggressions to these countries. To give you an example, in August, we went together with Lina's, myself, a friend, foreign minister from Latvia, and deputy prime minister from Ukraine, to Georgia to celebrate 10th anniversary of visit of our president with Lech Kaczyński and others. And we could observe the situation in Georgia. It was a demonstration of the fact that we think that we cannot forget about this conflict, because, I agree with David, the country is divided. There is a military build-up made by Russia in Abkhazia, in Ossetia, and simply we cannot accept that results of aggression as accepted, as done, with which international community agreed to a certain extent. When it comes to any action concerning that region, like meeting with dissident Khodorkovsky on demonstrate support to Sentsov, I can always count on Lina's, and I hope vice versa. So we try to be leading also as far as the decisions of the European Union are concerned towards how to develop further Eastern Partnership program. Next year it will be an anniversary. So the 2 countries you already mentioned, Sweden and Poland, are very interested, together with Romania, which will have presidency in the European Union first half of the year. So we would like to have meetings with these countries. But I think it is something to celebrate, because it is successful initiative, but we have to also think over further steps to discuss. within think tanks, in international group of experts, how we can further develop that program. And we have some ideas. For Poland, it is important to maybe transfer our experience in dealing with Western Balkans countries, which will be the subject of the discussion in the panel afternoon. Poland is chairing this Berlin process and will organize the meeting next year in Poznań. So maybe we can turn this Eastern Partnership Program to something like it is a Berlin process, to be more advanced, with the goal just to create the conditions that the countries of the program can really join the European Union, like it is the case concerning the Western Balkans countries. So for us, this experience of involvement in Western Balkans could be somehow transferred to further dealing with the Eastern Partnership countries. So it is an idea. But definitely, we will have to discuss the issue within the European Union. Next year, it is not a good year to take serious decisions due to the fact that it will be the election to the European Parliament, a new commission, so to say, a discussion about budget, different priorities than maybe external policy vis-à-vis the East. But we will do something and we will concentrate in our policy in future on Eastern dimension.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Minister Rapotowicz. Before I yield the floor to our guests, and I see already first hands raised, I just wanted to ask one very short question, because we've talked about, of course, the challenge of Russia, frozen conflict. We've talked about the European Union, the Eastern Partnership. But I wanted to ask you, and feel free not to answer this question, but I know one minister, at least Linas, have talked about it quite a lot. Are you worried about the growing rift between Europe and the United States? And how will that impact security in the eastern part of Europe? So, Linas, I mentioned your name. Start, please. Feel free. Because I think that's a very important question that has to be asked.
It's a challenge to all of us, and all years are not boring. All the time we have some problems, but now it's a kind of stress test, so to say, to our Euro-Atlantic unity. And I believe it will not just raise problems in our region, it's for all. And we should understand that transatlantic unity, Euro-Atlantic, so to say, power, it's a vehicle of progress, not only with regard to security, defense. I'm a believer, time will come for trade, time will come for other issues. And vice versa. If we'll be split, divided, it will be really good for bad forces. And we're already witnessing that because lack of leadership. It's like vacuum. It's filled immediately by something, and unfortunately not favorable. And definitely we are facing a situation in the world where we have really this lack of leadership, lack of ideas, and starting to reflect, to defend, to react, but not to come up with our positive, creative narrative. So this is not just a rift, this is something more. But I believe those who, maybe somebody will agree with me, that those who are really in intensive dialogue with our friends overseas, we really have very strong Euro-Atlantic community. They're very strong believers, and what was invested through decades, it's not so easy to destroy. Even somebody would like to see that, especially our opponents. It will not happen.
Thank you very much. Pavlo?
Look, I don't believe personally that it's gonna come to a fundamental rift, but I am worried because for us, for Ukraine, the whole sense of transatlantic solidarity, it actually what works quite well. And the sense of pressure on Russia, the sense that rule-based world and value-based world and transatlantic community is value-based is something which, you know, the Russian president fears the most. It's fundamentally the case. And everybody has, of course, 24 hours basically on everything. So when you are immersed in talking about internal issues, balancing within the transatlantic community, it's about losing time, and maybe it's about wasting time. And the second point, what is fundamentally important to keep such players like Russia at base is not just solidarity, it's not just comprehensive reaction, but also proactive approach. And with such possible discussions within transatlantic community, such proactive reaction, and it's fundamentally needed to get to the final touch of the new architecture would be more difficult. So it's clear.
Thank you very much. David?
I also would like to echo what my colleagues have just said and to express the same position that we are also concerned by these facts, but at the same time, for Georgia, we have a strong strategic partnership with the United States, and the European Union is also our strategic partner, and also to demonstrate this solidarity and the common response and transatlantic solidarity is really very important. In the 21st century, we are facing the increasingly sophisticated and non-conventional challenges, and the best response to these challenges is to demonstrate unity and solidarity. So I simply would like to express hope that this will be in future.
Four of countries presented here are against that rift, so if we vote for that, we'll be against, but will it be enough? Can we change the situation? So there is a good, so to say, presentation of the situation, that there are some differences between the United States and most important countries within the European Union. What can we do as Poland? We are definitely trying to create a situation that these differences are not too high and that there is always a possibility to come back to talks. It is presented as far as particular policies are concerned. For example, policy towards Iran. There is a big difference of opinion how to deal with threat Iran creates. So Poland is a member of the European Union. We participate in the discussion. We feel solidarity with our other member states. At the same time, we present within this discussion that we should take into consideration also American perception of the problem, which is based on the security concerns Iran creates in the region. So we are always pro-transatlantic within the European Union and also encourage both sides to stay, to discuss. It is the only policy we can have in that situation, because the permanent division between these two entities, European Union and the United States, would be detrimental to our security perception. Due to the fact that we are in this part of the world and we face challenges and threats to our security from Russia, all our countries are much more pro-American than average in the European Union, because we understand that only military presence of the United States in Europe, particularly in this part of Europe, can guarantee security for us. So we present that opinion in a discussion. I must say that it is understood by France, Germany, Great Britain, and they understand that. So discussion is going on. Let's hope that situation will be somehow under control.
Thank you very much, ministers. And I open the floor to our audience. I will take 3 questions and we'll take them together due to a time constraint. So I have a first question there. Any other questions? So shy, everybody? Okay, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Konrad Petkevičius, director of NATO Energy Security Center of Excellence based in Vilnius, Lithuania. And before I ask my question, I feel to mention that it's symbolic that members on the panel, both Lithuania is establishing nation of the center and Georgia is a long-time member of the center, but as I speak, both Poland and Ukraine are in the process of joining center. And my question goes towards the towards the energy security dimension of broader European security context, with both positive developments, 3Cs initiative, and Poland concluding the deal on LNG with the United States. But on the other hand, Nord Stream 2 being developed, and having NATO in my name, in the name of my organization, I would like to ask to ministers of the NATO countries, is this not the time that NATO gets more involved in energy security debate in order to actually address the current security dimension of energy, both in Europe but transatlantically as well?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I see that, yes, at the very back. And the microphone is coming. I'm afraid it's not working, the microphone. It might. Could we provide the gentleman with another microphone?
Hello. Hello, this is Johannes Ahlefeld, political advisor to the German Social Democrats in Parliament speaking. My question would be probably to Minister Čaputovič and Linkevičius. What are your key ideas or initiatives with view to EU reform, as I think beyond PESCO, as the strengthening of the European Union is going to be a key pillar of European security? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think two very important questions. So first of all, of course, energy security, critical, and can NATO be involved in any way? Should it be involved? And the question of PESCO, yes, how committed are we, and how do we synergize those efforts of the European Union with what we already have as many of us NATO member states? So please, Linas, please.
Can I? Jacek?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You're very
First
welcome.
of all, on energy, I remember quite well, it was time when NATO, I shouldn't say not involved at all, but almost not involved. It was before 2006, and Anders Fogh Rasmussen, Sec General, remembers quite well. We were discussing, is it our business or not? It was only in Riga in 2006 in summit, we put in the wording of the summit some commitments and also taskings to address this challenge. So my point is that we are always lagging behind. Because things are developing, and now we're talking about hybrid threats as very real threats. We have to review our manuals, we have to review our tactics, not only with regard to energy security, but I would add also cyber, also strategic communications, becoming no time to discuss, but it's also a weapon, because weaponizing media and spreading lies, you can really brainwash people, demotivate, and could create big problems in political scene and also consequently in all other aspects. So definitely answer is yes, we should do more, and to catch up a bit, not to lag behind as usually, but sometimes to lead. And this is not about covering everything, because just security aspects of energy. I'm not talking about everything, because we should coordinate. And also coordination between European Union and NATO is a must. It leads me to subsequent question about PESCO. I believe, and my feeling is, maybe General Hodges will agree with me, that's lack of understanding overseas what PESCO about, and is it really something like autonomous, so to say, activity, or something should be complementarity? My conviction is it must be complementary, same as other aspects. For instance, Lithuania, we have chosen segment of rapid reaction teams for cyber defense. That means we have to come up to the nations before crisis, during crisis, aftermath of the crisis, and regardless, is it European Union, is it NATO, it's the same challenge. So we have to understand whatever we are doing with scarce resources. A club of 2% is expanding because of some encouragements and some statements, but it's important to think how we will use these resources. And it would be not wise, if not to say stupid, to duplicate. It would be, or to compete, or to create something autonomous, because we're really facing the same challenges. So it's also with regard to the PESCO and to the strategy what Europe should do. We have also rapid reaction teams, so to say, in European Union, never used in practice, by the way. We have VJTF, we had an NRF in NATO. why we cannot prepare the same segments applicable to both organizations, regardless what kind of flag we have in the mission, is it NATO or European Union, because it's not rational, it's not also not respect to the taxpayers' money, by the way, which is also important to discuss. So let's be rational, let's be mutually complementary, so to say, and this is not about ambitions, it's about very practical approach and need to address challenges which are really common.
Excellent. Minister Klimkin, you wanted to talk about energy.
Three very short points. I won't repeat all the points about political character, about energy dependence, about energy security. You know all that stuff. I recall my conversation with a couple of Nord Stream supporters in Germany saying, look, Pavlo, we don't like Russia, we don't like Putin, but maybe it's a kind of dependence which gonna save us in the future. Maybe it's like in the 70s, something, you know, like Ostpolitik. And I asked them, look, we in Ukraine are ready to extend internal market treatment, EU market treatment, and direct application of the EU law for our gas transit system. And here is actually the European Union who is not ready to deliver. At the same time, you are not ready and you are actually against extending EU rules to Nord Stream 2. Is it not a kind of twisted reality, and can you basically try to understand where it's gonna brought you in the future? And it's an issue for everybody here. If it's a kind of political approach you're gonna follow, it's gonna get you in a completely different dimension, fully dependent on Russia. The second point, on non-conventional or hybrid or whatever it's called, come to Ukraine in the run-up to our elections and try to learn a bit, because even in our ministry we have at least one major cyber attack on our network and our accounts every week. In the sense of fakes, in the sense of disinformation, in the sense of everything, in the sense of targeting critical infrastructure. And it's not just about electoral networks. Just imagine the impact of a major blackout in one city 5 days before elections. So it's a big issue, and we've been working with our friends. But simply ask yourself whether you've done enough and whether you are proactive enough in countering Russian threats here. And on PESCO, you know, big point. So ask yourself, why not to engage Ukraine, at least where it's within the mandate and within some sense of clearance, with all kind of progress we basically achieved. And we have combat spirit for people. We know Russia, unfortunately, quite well. So it's a question in progress. But basically, it shouldn't be just about EU. It should be about all the friends and allies, basically focusing on all of that.
Thank you. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, also on energy.
So on energy security, of course, no, I agree with the position that much focus needs to be done from our European partners to the region. It's a well-known fact that Georgia is an important country, transit country, which provides it has important geopolitical location, and many big geostrategic energy projects are going through Georgian territory, where Georgia connects the Caspian oil and gas-rich region to Europe, and it's really important to intensify engagement from European Union with the countries in the region. Georgia is a gateway to the 8 deadlock countries, and I believe that much engagement from European Union to the Central Asian countries is really important. And of course, the Baku-Tbilisi, the gas pipeline, which Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, and also the Transatlantic and TANA project serves important connection with this region. So I believe that Europe should be more proactive in engagement and talks with countries in the region.
Excellent. Panie Ministrze.
As far as energy security is concerned, and the question if it could be dealt with within NATO, I think it is a good idea because you can look at the energy security from the point that it is a strategic resource, natural resource, and it is part of the security, so to say, package. But also you can look from the military point of view that if there is Nord Stream 2, for example, and the growing importance of this transit, then it may give some extra argument to Russia to be more militarily present in the Baltic Sea. And also there are some possibilities to send information. It could be treated also as a military installation, so to say. It's an additional argument. The problem is that we have difficulty with covering Nord Stream 2 within the European Union with the so-called third gas directive, because some countries prefer to look at the issue as an economic problem or deal, not as a security threat. Within NATO, on the one hand, it would be different discussion. There is a different balance of countries who understand that it is also that's also security dimension should be taken into account. On the other hand, these countries who are not interested to treat it seriously within the European Union, they are also member of NATO, so it would be difficult to convince them to take any decision. But very good point. Why not to discuss within the NATO implication of Nord Stream 2 and generally energy security for NATO. Second issue concerns PESCO and European defense. I think that first of all, it is good that European Union member states decided to invest more in military. It is necessary to meet a target set by within NATO, target of spending on military, and it will contribute to the security of the continent and security of NATO member states. PESCO could be, so our attitude is positive. It could be an instrument which can deal also autonomously with some kind of threats without asking NATO for action. The problem is when we discuss it further, should it be an alternative to NATO to a certain extent, or an attempt to create sustainable, autonomous military force in future without American presence, or something which is additional to NATO? In the first case, we are very much against, because we think it is unrealistic to expect that Europe creates such a force which will be treated seriously by Russia. If it is additional, it is good. So we think that for the moment it is not decided, rather it is a supplementary integration or cooperation supplementary to the one in NATO. So we are very open, we would like to take part in that. One additional comment on that, in the field of security, there is kind of a synergy. When a country invests, say Poland, in infrastructure, which could be used by European forces, but the same infrastructure between Poland and Lithuania, bridges for example, can be used also by NATO forces. The same goes for European Union. Armament could be used within the framework of European, so to say, structure or NATO structure. So we do not have to decide immediately about that idea. We support, we should develop, the European Union should spend more on improvement of its military capability.
Thank you. And as we have 1.5 minutes left, I want you to think, because we meet at those forums year after year, and it seems that the number of problems only grows, does not decrease. But I would want you to think about one optimistic, positive thing that has happened over the last year or is happening this year that you would want to share in 20 seconds with the audience. Because it's sometimes hard, we sometimes tend to forget that there's also good things happening in the area of security. So Panie ministrze?
Yes, I will just say that my yesterday's meeting with Pablo, it was very optimistic sign of good relations with Ukraine and our cooperation with our friends from Georgia. We will have bilateral discussion after that panel today. So I think that it is a sign that Poland, from my experience as a relatively new foreign minister, the first half of the year was to deal mainly with the European Union member states. Now it's time to look more towards our Eastern partners, and we are doing that. It is very important. We are in the Central and Eastern Europe. We have to look to our neighbors to the East.
Thank you very much. Linas, anything positive?
I will use this few seconds for also some small commercial. Straight after this panel, I invite everyone, members of panel first of all, but also others to not far away from here by the reception area. It will be vivid demonstration of our Polish-Lithuanian friendship, unity and solidarity and alliance. It will be really interesting, very short event, so I invite you. It's also good news. So there are good news, let's look for them.
Pavel?
So right after this great panel, I gonna meet Orthodox Metropolitan of Poland, pushing further out our autocephaly. And it's about our mental independence also from Russia. It's one of the big steps. But I believe, and you can take my remark as a bit philosophical, that fundamentally Europe, as a part of transatlantic community, is awakening to the fact that security and prosperity in this world is not just for nothing. You have to fight for it. It's not just something which will be there forever. And as Ukrainians, we understand we have to fight for everything in our life. It's about sort of combat spirit, not only military sense. The same spirit. It's about people who want to have their values and prosperity to prosper also in the future. And I believe that Europe is definitely awakening. And for me, it's the most positive tendency I could follow.
Excellent. David, last but not
Yes,
least.
it's excellent that we have increased cooperation with our European partners, and this year we had unprecedented level of high-level visits, and also the new formats established within the frameworks of Georgia, EU. Now we are preparing for the upcoming college-to-government meeting, which will be by the end of November, so it will be excellent opportunity for Georgia to discuss the highest level with our European partners about integrational processes, sectoral cooperation in particular. Georgia is developing roadmap to Europe, which is our unilateral task, our visionary document, how to go beyond the implementation of association agreement, and this document will help us to prepare country functionally to our eventual goal, which is full integration into European family of nations.
Excellent. Thank you very much, ministers. Let's give them a big round of applause.